Hello, my name is Anna Rahoff, Associate Director of Admission within the Office of Undergraduate Admission. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Over the course of this session, we will be discussing, or rather describing, the remote counseling session experience and providing some helpful tips and guidance as to how to make the most of your one-on-one session. Before we get started, let's take a look at Zoom. Perhaps you've used Zoom many times before, or perhaps this is your first time using it. Your remote counseling session, either through Carnegie Mellon University or through another institution, will most likely be hosted through Zoom. When you enter the session, you'll have the option to unmute yourself, mute yourself, and start or stop the video, as you can see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. You'll also see that there is a chat function in the middle of the screen, which can be helpful in case you encounter any technical difficulties. For example, if the internet within your location starts to work less effectively, or perhaps Zoom unexpectedly quits, you can use that chat function to let the person you're communicating with know that you're no longer able to speak over the regular platforms and that you're going to give them a call, just as an example. So what is a remote counseling session? A remote counseling session is quite different from an interview. So interviews are evaluative. They typically go on your record and provide information about you that the admission committee will use when making admission decisions. Because of this, oftentimes the person or representative interviewing you will have a select question that they would like to ask you in order to receive information about specifically what your background is and what your interests are. Remote counseling sessions are really different for two main reasons. The first one is that they are 100% non-evaluative. That means that the information shared in these counseling sessions is not going to affect your application for admission, except for that perhaps what you learn in the counseling session could make you a more prepared applicant. Because of this, the admission counselor who's hosting the session will not have specific questions that they want to ask you because it's not evaluative. Rather, we ask that students become prepared with their own questions. So how do you prepare for a remote counseling session? The first thing that I recommend doing is checking out the website of the institution that you are applying to and taking a look at what their values are as an institution. Do they offer financial aid? Really taking a bit of a dive into what the institution is like so that this can inform the questions that you ask. In general, the better prepared you are for the counseling session, the more you're going to get out of the counseling session. So it's definitely helpful to prepare a list of questions, and feel free to take pauses throughout the session. Maybe some of your questions were answered and you're not quite sure where you want to take the session after that. It's totally okay to say, hey, can I just have a couple of minutes to get organized mentally, and then come back with whatever questions or comments that you'd like to make. And the last but most important thing is not to worry. This is an informal session. So like I said, it's not evaluative. We're frankly just excited to hear from students and connect and share information, but we're not evaluating or judging you in any way. All right, so now we are going to transition to taking a look at how you can research a college online. Just one moment while I change the screen that you're looking at. All right, so typically when researching a college online, I start by looking at their undergrad admission website, which will have a lot of helpful information about the admission process. So it's always helpful to take a look at that to see, okay, what's considered within the admission review process, right? These are all of the different requirements. It's helpful that you look at this in advance, because then when you go into the session, you can ask questions about specific requirements. So maybe perhaps you're looking at the letters of recommendation requirement and you're wondering, oh, it looks like you require one from a counselor, but that's not going to be something that you're able to provide. Perhaps there's not a counselor at your school that you work closely with, or maybe there's no counselor at all. It's helpful to know that in advance. You can go into the session then asking the admission representative, hey, what can I do to fulfill this requirement, since it's not something that I can easily do. Another thing I would definitely recommend that you take a look at is financial aid. So, for example, at Carnegie Mellon, financial aid is awarded 100% on the basis of need. This means that we do not offer scholarships, and the application process for financial aid includes submitting the FAFSA, CSS profile, and tax documents. Another thing that you can do is submit a net price calculator, which is something that any school that you are applying to that receives federal funds should be able to review. So it's helpful if you complete the net price calculator in advance, because then when you're in the counseling session, you can share your results with the person that you're communicating with and ask any questions. So for example, going through all of the questions here, it's going to generate your expected family contribution and the net price you can expect to pay. So if you go through this process in advance, then when you're in the counseling session, you can ask any questions that you might have about that. Another thing that I would do for CMU or for any school that uses the college model is to take a look specifically at the major or program that you're interested in and browse through the courses that are offered. Take a look at the potential double majors and minors. Maybe there's something here you have a question about or you're excited to talk about. At CMU, our admission counselors can answer any general questions about specific colleges, schools, or programs that you have an interest in. We don't have as specialized knowledge as the specific school itself, but if you have questions in advance, we can connect you with someone in that school who can answer the question on a more granular, detailed level if it's not something that we are able to answer ourselves. All right, so here are some examples of questions that you could ask during a remote counseling session. I'll leave this up for a moment so that you can take a screenshot if it's something you're interested in bringing into your next session. So it's helpful that you ask both questions that relate to specific quantifiable information, like, does your institution accept AP or IB credit? But it can also be helpful to get a feel for what the values are of the institution, right? Is it a place where students spend a lot of time off campus? Are students really active within campus traditions? Many institutions have YouTube channels or social media as well, where you can take a look at the different traditions and activities that students participate in. So what makes a successful remote counseling session? There's no right way to do this, right? I think what makes a successful remote counseling session is when the student is prepared and they have questions that they'd like to ask, right? That allows the student to get the most they can out of the session. And the other thing that's helpful to remember is that we as admission representatives should be able to either answer all of your questions or provide you with the contact information of someone else who can if we cannot. So we may not be able to answer all the specific questions that you have, but we'll definitely make sure that we can find an answer for you, even if that means looping in another staff member. And last but not least, we'd definitely like to continue the conversation with you during your remote counseling session at Carnegie Mellon or any other institutions you may be applying for. Definitely feel free to reach out to the admission counselor and ask them if you can have their contact information. So, a virtual exchange of a business card, if you will. You can ask them for their email address. And it's okay to ask them to repeat their name too. So in the virtual space, we're all doing our best to be attentive and take notes, but I know myself, even after having gone through these counseling sessions many, many times, right? Sometimes I have to look up a student's name again or ask a colleague, hey, can you reintroduce yourself again? And that is totally okay. Remember, this is an informal session. Our goal here is to support you, to answer whatever questions you have, and it's totally okay to, repeat yourself again, take a moment, take a break. We are definitely here for that, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you for attending this session.